Discovery, go at throttle up.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Front Row Chaos. Today I have an extremely special guest on my podcast. Today I have Loyd Horn. He is from Richvale, California, and he is here in the studio with me today. And we're going to be talking about Loyd's life, what he's done in his past, and his military service. So, Loyd, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I just can't believe you're here, Loyd. I'm honored by your presence. I really am. I read your biography that they did on you from the Patrick Ranch that is at the Richvale Cafe in Richvale, California. If you're ever there, you can take it and take a look at that. It's really, really interesting. But I read that thing front to back. I'm just honored that you're here with me today. I know I gave you the option. You could do it on the phone with me or you could do it here in the studio. And you came to the studio, and before we're sat down for this taping, we had dinner together. And my wife made an excellent dinner, and we're going to send a bunch home with you, Lloyd, when you take off. So thank you again for coming, Lloyd. So I guess we'll start off here. Lloyd, can you tell us where you were born and in what year that was?
I was born on French Avenue, southwest of Gridley, on the 10th day of March, 1924.
10th day of March, 1924. Wow. So we're getting close to 100 years, Lloyd, right?
Oh, I think I can make it.
I think you can too, man. You drove to my house and everything. I mean, you're really something else, Lloyd, I tell you. So you were born there. How many brothers and sisters or any?
I had two brothers and a sister, which have all passed away before me.
Okay.
My wife is gone. She passed away a few years ago. We had one son, and he passed away suddenly at 62 years old, so I now live alone.
You live alone. And Lloyd, you live in Richvale still, correct?
I live in Richvale.
Okay.
I've lived in Richvale since 1964.
And is that the same house you bought in 64? You still there?
I bought that house in 1964.
And just curious, Lloyd, how much did you pay for that in 64?
I'm ashamed to tell you. I bought 2 acres, 2 barns, a 2-car garage with an extension, and my house for $10,500.
Oh my gosh, Lloyd.
I took out a Calvet loan for 10 years, and I paid it off in 10 years.
Oh, boy. Oh, wow, Lloyd. Okay, well, that is something different today, I tell you. So, Lloyd, back to when you were born on French Avenue, what was your childhood like? Like, can you tell the listeners, like, what was a normal day for Lloyd when you were a kid? What did you do? Things like that.
Well, I had 2 brothers, an older brother and a younger brother. And French Avenue is out of town about 5 miles. It was during the Depression. I was a very poor student in school because I could look out the window and see so many things that I'd rather be doing than being in class. So I was a damn poor student, both in school, grammar school and high school. I excelled in sports. The one subject I loved in high school was biology.
Oh.
We were like a bunch of little Indians. During the summer break, when we were in school, we were barefooted, pocket full of rock and a slingshot, and a half a dozen matches, and we'd stay out all day shooting birds and cooking them over our fire. Anyway, we were raised like a bunch of little Indians out there.
So you probably had good feet, you could walk on anything.
Oh boy, like leather. My mother complained that we always wore the holes out of the bottom of our pockets carrying rocks.
So you had your brothers and you did things outside, I assume.
Oh, we were outside all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. I got to tell you a story. My older brother and I were in grammar school. We were going to the old West Liberty School.
Uh-huh.
And we'd found old double spring trap, seal trap. I don't know, maybe we stole it from somebody. I don't know. Anyway, we decided we was going to go out and be trappers. So we went out about a mile or so out of town to it, and there was a bunch of holes in a bank out there, and we set that trap in the front of one of those holes, staked it down good and tight, went home. Next day after school, we went trotting down there, and that trap was gone down the hole.
Oh.
But the chain was still tied to the stake. And I says, "It's a skunk." And my brother said, "Nah, it's a coon." And I said, "No, it's a skunk." And he starts hauling that thing up out of that hole, and it was a skunk.
With his tail towards you?
Yeah, well, all the way home, he'd smell me, and he says, "I don't smell anything." I'd smell him, and I don't smell anything. Dad had just got home from work, stepped in the door, and he says, "Get the hell out of this house."
Oh, man.
That was the first experience I had with trapping.
Oh, boy, Lloyd. Skunk smell. Oh. So how did you know, Lloyd, it was a skunk, or did you just guess?
I could smell it.
You could smell it. So you had two brothers, you said, and a sister, and then your dad and mom, what did they do, Lloyd?
Dad and mom worked in the cannery here in Gridley. The old Libby cannery.
Okay.
And my dad did too. And mom worked during the peach season. My dad worked the full season.
Gotcha.
So he worked most of his time at the cannery.
At the cannery. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you had siblings, Lloyd. When you were growing up, what kind of sports did you play, and what was your favorite one?
Football.
Football.
Oh, I loved football.
Now, back then, Lloyd, did you have leather helmets or did you have regular helmets?
Leather helmet.
Leather helmets.
And no dang face mask.
No face mask. Oh, man, Lloyd. Now, did you ever get popped in the face?
Nope, I didn't.
No. So was that a common thing, or did people just kind of avoid? Or
you kept your head out of there. You didn't go in with your head like they do today.
Gotcha. I've always wondered that, how bad it was playing with those. Did it have much protection, Lloyd, at all?
We had pads.
I mean, the head. Did you ever feel like it was not protected very well, or did it just feel,
No, I never felt that.
Never felt that way. So your favorite sport's football. Do you follow football today?
Oh, yes, I do.
And who's your favorite team?
I'd have to say the 49ers.
The 49ers. All right. So local guy, and so you played football. How about baseball, basketball, stuff like that? Not much?
No, I didn't play either basketball or I was too damn small.
Gotcha.
But I did love football.
Love football. Oh, and you said you did win a championship in football, Lloyd, is that right?
We won the 1942 championship of the West Side League.
Oh, wow. Now, do you remember who was in your division at that time, Lloyd?
Oh, yeah, Bud Waterbury, Bud Hooper, Alvin Richens, Hoyt Hayes, Roland Chambers. I can think of the rest of them.
How about what teams did you play, Lloyd?
Willows, Clusa, Orland.
Durham?
No, we didn't play Durham.
No, Durham. Live Oak?
No, Orland, Willows, Clusa.
Maybe Arbuckle or Pierce?
No,
Not them.
They were smaller schools.
Smaller
at that
schools.
time, yeah.
Okay. Well, Lloyd, what grammar school and high school did you attend?
I was in the first grade at the old West Liberty School. I got double pneumonia that year, and I missed most of that year.
Oh.
Well, my folks during that time had moved into Gridley, and at that time with the Depression, the dad didn't have any money to put me in a hospital, so they put me in a room to die.
Really?
And I lived.
You lived?
And to this day, I have not had a chest cold.
Wow.
Since then, I'm immune.
Well, that's good, Lloyd, for sure.
So I missed 1 year out. So I was 1 year ahead of most of my buddies in high school.
I see.
As soon as I graduated from high school, we were at war on two fronts. And being old country boy, I joined the Army.
So you joined the Army. So high school, you go to from West Liberty to Gridley High School, correct? And that's
Yep.
where you graduated
Yep.
from.
Yep.
You go there, Lloyd, and then after high school, you go to the military. Is that correct?
Straight into the military. Yeah.
And so what age would that have been, Lloyd?
I was 18.
18 years old. You chose to sign up,
Yep.
and you signed up, and what did you do there?
Well, we went. They took us all down to Monterey at the Presidio, and that's when I was sworn into the Army.
Okay.
They gave us a aptitude test, which is nothing but an IQ test.
Okay.
And for some reason, they assigned me to the medical corps.
And no formal training before then
No
about
formal
medic.
training, but I think my grades in biology
Oh,
was what turned the tide, and I was sent into the medical corps.
and that makes sense because you said biology was one of your favorites, right?
Yep.
Okay. So you go into the medic corps, then you go from the Presidio to where, Lloyd?
Camp Barkley, Texas,
Camp Barkley, Texas.
out of Abilene, Texas.
And you studied there and trained?
Yep, that's where I took my basic
Okay.
and some medical training there.
And this year would have been what, Lloyd?
Would it be 1943?
43?
Yeah.
44? Okay.
43 at that time.
43. Okay. So you do your basic down in Texas.
Yep.
And then where?
I went straight to Louisville, Kentucky, to the Nichols General Hospital, which was a military hospital on the outskirts of Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay.
I took a crash course in being a field medic.
Okay.
I think that was about 3 months. Or maybe
About 3
4
months
I
course.
don't know. I can't remember exactly.
Okay.
I didn't carry a day by day.
Gotcha. So you finished with the medic course in Kentucky, then where?
I was shipped from Kentucky to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey for an overnight stay. The next day, they bussed us down to the pier in New York, offloaded us on the bus, and they told us to go down into a covered pier, something like maybe the ferry buildings in San Francisco. And there was a gangplank. They said, go down there and go up that gangplank. You will be assigned your quarters. Do not leave your quarters until advised otherwise. So I went down, I went up the gangplank, and I went into the ship, and they assigned me to a hammock on D deck, as in dog. And I got up in that hammock, and I laid down, and I thought, A, B, C, D. God, this has got to be a big ship. So I laid there for a few hours, and finally I felt that ship shudder a little bit, and we were on our way.
On your way.
And pretty soon the word come over, you can move about the ship. Well, I'd laid in that old hammock for a few hours, and I wanted to exercise, so I started to find my way up to the promenade deck.
Uh-huh.
So I got up to about B deck, and at the head of the stairs was a life-size oil painting of the Queen Mary. And I said, I'm aboard the Queen Mary.
Really?
So I walked out on the deck just in time, and we were totally blacked out. But I looked out across the bay, and there was the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, wow.
All lit up in their floodlights, and I said a little prayer. I said, you stay there because I'm coming back.
You're coming back.
Well, I did.
Well, you did. Yes, sir. That prayer was answered, Lloyd, and I'm glad for that. So you get on that ship, Lloyd, and I guess I'm going to back up just a second. You said you signed up for the military. Was that like you and your buddies doing it together, or was that just you doing it by yourself?
No. They split you up.
So
You rarely got. In fact, I only met one person from home all the time I was in the military.
Gotcha. Was that a normal thing for boys to do back then?
They did it to you. I mean, Once you say I do,
Yeah.
you're theirs.
But I
And
mean,
they tell you what you're going to do. You don't.
I mean, was the attitude with all your friends that they were going to do the same thing, or was that a
Oh,
rare?
no,
That was
no,
a
no,
rarity that you
no.
did that.
Johnny Pinicaldo, I remember him. They split us up at Monterey.
Gotcha. So you get on that ship, Lloyd. Now you're heading to Europe. Is that right?
That's right.
And where do you go there?
The Queen Mary was so fast that no escort could keep up with her.
Oh,
So we went up into the North Pacific. It was a rough ride. And there was 15,000 of us aboard that ship.
oh.
And I think 14,000 of them were seasick, including me. Anyway, 5 days and 5 nights, and I was seasick, and I don't think I ate a thing. I was so dehydrated, my whole body tingled. I was getting scared about my health.
Yeah.
Well, one morning I woke up, and we weren't pitching and rolling anymore, and I wasn't seasick anymore. And I got out of my hammock, and I went up on the promenade deck, and there was land on both sides.
Oh.
And I thought, and it was just breaking daylight. And it was a beautiful sight. Those green hills and sheep grazing and the stone fences. And we went up this fjord to a bay called Greenock Bay, Scotland, on the northwestern coast of Scotland. And they offloaded us. We were lucky. Being down on D deck, we were one of the first ones to get off.
Oh, there you go.
And it was a pier. There was no buildings on it. It was just a stone and mortar pier. And at the land's end of that pier was 2 donut and coffee trucks. And man, I headed for the first one. And a little sign said 2 donuts and a cup of coffee to each person. Well, I downed those 2 donuts, the best damn donuts I ever ate in my life. And I stood there a minute, I looked over at that other truck, and I said, they didn't say I couldn't have one at the other one. So I trotted over there, and I got me 2 more donuts.
Well, you haven't eaten 5 days, right?
Yeah.
So Scotland is where you land.
Scotland,
That's where you
that's where we offloaded.
offloaded there. When you signed up for the military, what did your parents say?
I don't recall them having a word about it.
Okay.
They agreed with me.
Okay.
Of course, we were all very patriotic people.
Gotcha. So it just made sense. That's good.
Yeah.
So you offloaded Scotland. Now where, Lloyd?
They put us on a train, and it was a train of passenger cars, and it had nice windows. We went up through Scotland and into England, and we traveled into England up south through England. They offloaded us in a little village called Stockbridge.
Stockbridge.
It's close to Winchester.
Okay.
We had to hike about a mile to a little tar paper shacks called barracks. And I mean to say, they were tar paper shacks. And it was the middle of December, and it was colder than hell. And there was one little pot-bellied stove in each barracks, and the only thing we had for fuel was coke. It burns hot, but it's hard to keep burning. Anyway, we were in that camp for a while, and then they shipped us off again to a largest town called Cirencester. And there was a small camp there, but they were much better buildings.
Gotcha.
And it was on the estate of the Lord Lethe Bathurst. And we were there for a while, and one day we got notice, pack your gear. And they moved us out into a tent camp on Salisbury Plains. Well, we knew what that was. That was the staging area for the invasion of France.
Oh.
About a mile from us was an airstrip. And all that was on that airstrip was C-47s and gliders, those big old
Yeah, I've seen those on a couple of the documentaries,
Well,
the gliders.
That's where the gliders were kept.
Okay.
And every day we'd see the gliders going, circling and going back in and land. One morning I woke up to the sound of, there was hundreds of airplanes in the air. Something's up, and I walked outside. It was just getting daylight, and all these gliders were in the air, and they were getting in a small formations and heading into the southeast, and they weren't coming back. And I said, boy, something's up.
Oh, boy.
Well, a few hours later, we were notified that the invasion of France had taken place that morning.
So they didn't even let you guys know.
We didn't have a clue.
You didn't have a clue.
That was a well-kept secret. So I got to see the gliders leave, but the C-47s come back, but no gliders. A few days later, I got to see where the gliders went in, and they took a beating.
So those gliders went in first, I guess you'd say,
Well,
right? Or while the invasion was going on?
The paratroopers went in around St. Marie Iglesias, and the gliders went into the farming country a few miles away. They run out of air, they got to land.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And some of them piled up, bad. I seen gliders hanging in trees.
So that was June 6th then, correct,
Yeah.
Lloyd? So June 6th, the gliders do their thing. You get to where?
Well, a few days after D-Day, the orders came to pack your gear. And we went down to Southampton, to the port of Southampton. We got aboard a ship and went across the channel early one morning. They anchored off and this was a few days after the D-Day.
Okay.
So it wasn't during the initial landing. And they threw the rope ladders over the side, and here come the landing craft, and we dropped off in the landing craft, and they took us in. We were lucky. The tide was in, and the channel was fairly calm, and I didn't even get my feet wet. When they dropped that plank, I jumped out on the sand.
Oh, wow.
And they told us to cross the beach as fast as possible, and then head for the high ground above the. So I went across. I picked a trail that went up a kind of a wash, and just as I got to the top, right on my right was a great big old bunker with two Ju-88 cannons sticking out. That got my attention.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, it had been some brave fellow who had thrown a satchel pack in it and had blew it up, because you could see the smoke streaks on the
Coming out
above the gun port. And then we went inland about a mile, and they told us go in, and there would be a highway. Turn left on the highway and go about a mile. You come to an apple orchard. That'll be your bivouac for the night. They said, pitch your tent, pups, eat your K rations, and go to bed. I didn't smoke, so I always buddied up with a fellow from Ohio that didn't smoke either. And we pitched our pups and ate our K's and crawled in our sack, and there wasn't much going on. And it was a dark night, and all of a sudden I started hearing a rumble to the east, and it got louder and louder. I stuck my head out, and I could see the flash of aerial artillery going off. And two Ju-88 twin-engine bombers came right over us, and they was throwing the kitchen sink at them. Well, the shrapnel was flying through the trees, and man, I was scared of the damn shrapnel from our own fire more than I was those damn planes. Finally, they disappeared. They were heading for Cherbourg, because Cherbourg was still being held by the Germans.
Gotcha.
And Cherbourg was a deep water port. So we needed that deep water port. So a few days after we landed in Normandy, the German surrendered. They were surrounded by land, air, and sea. Their supplies were cut off, and they were
done.
Well, the high command told them to fight to the last man, but the commanding officer of that group that was holding Cherbourg must have not have been a Nazi, because he says it's hopeless.
It's
and,
hopeless.
and they came out waving a white flag.
What was it like, Lloyd, when you landed on that beach? And you said Omaha Beach, correct? Yeah. Omaha Beach. You land on that beach. From what I have seen on documentaries and then Saving Private Ryan, the first 20 minutes of that show, what did it look like?
They pretty well cleaned up by the time we got there. It was secure. I'll put it that way.
Okay. And the landmine situation, and they still have those hiding around and stuff like that? Or?
Most of those in that area had been cleared out.
Okay.
Or stepped on. And
yeah.
Because the Germans planted what they call a bouncing Betty in the trails.
Okay.
And if you stepped on one of those, the last thing you ever saw was when that thing blowing up in your face.
So you get to Omaha Beach, you get inland, you set up camp. You go anywhere from there, Lloyd, or is it...
Yes. The next day, they moved us up to about halfway between St. Marie Église and St. Lo. Everything installed at St. Lo, just a few miles up the road from us. And we bivouacked in a couple of cow pastures.
Gotcha.
And we stayed in that bivouac for several days. And in fact, we stayed there until the port of Cherbourg was secure, and our supplies finally caught up with us. And we set up our hospital. And we had an operating hospital in tents in Normandy by the time that Patton and his armor broke through the German line and headed across France.
Okay. Now, you were probably seeing all kinds of injuries, Lloyd, right, in the hospital?
You know, it wasn't too bad.
Well, that's good.
The reason is that when the Germans finally broke and turned and headed back across France, they never stopped till they got to the German border.
Oh, I see.
So there wasn't much going on. We were surprised. We didn't have many casualties.
Good. You hear about these things over there, Lloyd, called hedgerows.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, there's hedgerows and there's hedgerows. Some of them were just hedgerows.
I mean, is that like what you think about a bush that goes a long
Yep.
way?
They're
Or tree lines?
just fence lines. Most of them had a barbed wire fence mixed in with it. But then there was hedgerows of huge European oak. So I say there's hedgerows and there's hedgerows.
Little ones and big ones, I guess.
Yeah.
Huh? And so that must have been, like you said, tough for the gliders to navigate, I guess.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
You know, you coming in, you're like, oh, I got a nice, oh, there's a hedgerow, and I'm in trouble. That's crazy, Lloyd. So you do that, and then a few days after you got there, you said Germany surrenders. Is that right?
They surrendered the port, and as soon as they cleared the mines out of the shipping channel, the supplies started rolling in.
Okay.
By the time that Patton broke through the Germans' line at St. Lo, to give you an idea of just how many tons and tons of supplies was in Normandy, there was a fuel dump just up the road from us a little ways. And by the time Patton broke through the German lines, it was said there was 4 million gallons of gasoline in 5-gallon jerry cans.
Oh, I can't even fathom how many cans that would be. Oh my gosh. Wow. I wish we had that nowadays.
At least the prices of it.
That's right.
Because I can remember in high school, I bought gas for 25 cents a gallon.
Oh boy, Lloyd. Okay, so 25 cents a gallon, Lloyd. This is good. So what was a normal guy making an hour?
An hour?
Yeah, like at a job. What would you normally make at that time when gas is 25 cents?
About $1.
About $1 an hour.
Yeah.
So that's still good compared to nowadays.
I think there was one time during the Depression that my dad was only making 25 cents a child.
Wow. So 24 cents a gallon. So you guys get the Germans to surrender. Did you come into contact with any German troops?
We eventually had some German prisoners helping at the hospital.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
And were they nice people? Were
Oh,
they?
hell. Well, they had been well selected. We had one little young fellow, spoke very good English, and we used him for an interpreter.
Uh-huh.
And he was the son of a doctor in Berlin, and he was 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Did you ever shoot at any Americans?" And he said, "No." He said, "They put us out. They didn't. They just give us a gun, and took us out there, and it was just gun fodder." And he said, "Here come Patton and all these tanks," and I dove in a hole. And he says, "I laid there with my face down until there was Americans all around me, and I jumped up, and he says, I threw my hands in the air, and I give up. I give up." So we had there was a lot of, they weren't all Nazis.
Gotcha.
They was good people.
Yeah, that's always what all the documentaries I try to watch about the old World War II and what kind of brainwashing that Hitler did to a lot of those people. And,
Well, they had the Hitler Youth.
Yeah.
You had to be careful with those boys.
Yeah, I bet. The war is declared over, I guess. Is that right, Lloyd? Somewhere in that time frame?
Well, they shipped us after Normandy. We went up on train, I think out of St. Marie-Église. And when that train finally stopped, we were in boxcars. Everybody had to go, but there was no place to go and when that train pulled into a rail yard and stopped, boy, everybody made a rush for that damn cargo door, and we didn't care who the hell was looking. We hung it out and drained. And I was standing there, and I looked out across the skyline, and there was the Eiffel Tower.
Oh.
I said, "We are in Paris."
We're in Paris.
Well, they took us up and dumped us off in a forest, and I'm sure it was the Ardennes. They decided we were too close to the front lines, so they moved us back into Liège, Belgium. And we set up a hospital in Liège, and we just got the hospital set up when the Germans had their counterattack called the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
And it was a cold winter. I mean, it was bitter cold.
Yeah, how was the weather over there, Lloyd? Is it
fairly mild most of the time, but that was the coldest winter I ever spent in my life.
Wow.
But we were ready for that. And then we had a lot of casualties.
Wow. So the Battle of the Bulge happens, you're taking care of the wounded people. And then where do you go from there, Lloyd?
Well, they finally moved us out of there, and they moved us up north towards Holland, to a village called Tongres, Belgium. We took over some buildings just out of town, which I think had been a minimum security prison.
Okay.
And we built that into the finest hospital we had. And I always wondered, time that I was there, I was wondering, why are we here? Pretty soon I looked up, and there was hundreds of bombers going over, leaving their vapor trails, coming out of their English bases and bombing the industrial north of Germany.
Oh.
So their flight path was right over
Right
us.
over you.
So there would be so many that they'd block out the sun with their vapor trails. But a few hours later, or an hour, a few hours, here'd come healthy birds back, leaving their vapor trails. We'd wait a few minutes, and here'd come the wounded birds out on the deck. We found out in a hurry why we were sent out there.
Gotcha.
There was an emergency airstrip not far from us, and those bombers that were tore up were trying to make that emergency airstrip because nearly all of them had casualties aboard.
Sure.
So we had ambulances out there to pick up them, to get them to the hospital as quickly as possible.
Well, that's a good, yeah.
So we found out why we were sent out
Yeah,
there.
you're there for a good reason, Lloyd. So you do a stint up there in Holland, and then where do you go?
That was it.
That was it.
The war ended. We were still there. We had a fine hospital. We even had a dental
Wow.
lab.
Wow.
OR, everything was set up. It was not. It was a good operation by the time we left.
So the war ends there,
Yeah,
and then you're shipped back home from there?
you just had to wait until your turn came up. Then they moved you into, well, with us especially, moved us to, it was a debarkation camp anyway. We were the only hospital outfit to be there. And they had a bulletin board in the middle of the camp. And when you got there, you were at the bottom. And as they shipped them out, you moved up to the top.
Gotcha.
Well, a flu epidemic broke out, and we were the only hospital out in there. In that, they made us man the dispensaries and start giving flu shots. I give flu shots all day long. I never give so many. Anyway, because we were the only ones there, when we got to the top, they moved us to the bottom.
Ah.
That happened twice, and we rebelled.
Make you wait and think you're going to go, and then you drop down again. Oh, man, Lloyd. So when you were doing this medic work, Lloyd, what kind of stuff were you doing with these people? You said shots, things like that?
We give mostly bandaging and changing bandage on wounds and
Gotcha.
And cutting casts off of bodies that have been broken up and that sort of thing.
Okay.
That's what we were doing.
Gotcha. So you finally get on a ship, I assume, to go home.
Yes, we finally rebelled, and they put us aboard an old French ship called the Athos II. It was a rusty-looking old thing, and we got on board, and it went across to Southampton, picked up fuel, and the next morning we took off. Well, 6 days out, and it was a slow boat to China. 6 days out, we run head on into a hurricane.
Ooh.
The wind got up to 127 miles an hour. Height of the storm, the rudder failed.
Oh.
When we came around broadside, we were in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
We lost nearly all of our life-saving gear that was stacked on deck. There was 4 lifeboats left, and they were all damaged. Nearly all of our food had been destroyed. Nearly all of our fresh water had been destroyed. They'd blown one seal in one of the drive lines, and they finally got the steering fixed. It was a hydraulic problem that time, and we rode out the storm. The next day, I walked out on the deck, and it was blue sky, and the sea was calm, but we were going the wrong direction.
Oh.
And I thought, what? We were supposed to be going south or northwest, yeah. And we were going southeast. Well, 3 days later, we pulled into a strait between 2 islands, the Portuguese Azores. They declared the ship unworthy of going any further. We sat there for 2 weeks, 1 meal a day and 1 canteen of water a day.
Oh, waiting for the ship to get
waiting
fixed?
For somebody to come and pick us up.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, the Portuguese, one island was Faial, and the other was Pico. Well, Pico was just a mountain, but Faial was a lot like it was in England. It's rolling hills and farmland and windmills.
Uh-huh.
They must have had a bumper crop of cabbage. They delivered cabbage out to us, and we had cabbage.
Oh.
And we had salvaged a bunch of hams. We had cabbage and ham one day, and we had hams and cabbage the next day for nearly 2 weeks.
Oh, man.
Anyway, we survived. One morning I woke up, and there was somebody up on the top deck hollering, and I was excited. And I run up there to see what was going on and looked out, and there's a big aircraft carrier sitting about a half a mile out, and we could see the motor launches coming our way. And we got orders, pack your gear. It turned out it was the aircraft carrier Enterprise. It came out of New York to pick us up.
Wow.
They finally got us aboard that thing, and she headed for New York. It didn't wobble. It didn't bobble. It just went cruise through the water like and food. You could go down to the galley and get food anytime you want it. Cake and ice cream, showers. Oh my God, the shower. Wash our clothes. Those boys know how to live.
So you get on this aircraft carrier, and it's a little better than the boat you were
Oh
on.
my God. Oh, we finally, 3 days later, pulled into New York Harbor. The fireboats came out, shooting their water cannons, and
Oh, that's great.
well, we thought we were important people.
Well, you were.
We pulled up and tied up to the pier in Staten Island. Come to find out, it was the last trip that the aircraft carrier Enterprise was going to make under commission.
Oh, wow.
And they were celebrating the old Big E, and not us. But who give a damn? We're home.
That's right. You're home. You said a prayer to the Statue of Liberty, and now you're back.
Yep.
You made it. So you get to New York, Lloyd. Do you just immediately get on a bus or a train to go home, or how's that work?
No, they bussed us out to Camp Kilmer, and we got there late in the evening. They fed us, and it was unheard of in those days. They segregated the boys that were from the West Coast, and they put us on C-47, and we flew home.
Wow.
We got out in the middle of Ohio, and we hit a snowstorm, and I don't know how the hell they ever found the runway, but they did. They landed it and fed us, put us aboard again. They took off, and we were no longer going west. We were going south. They were trying to get around that storm.
Gotcha.
We flew all night. We finally got into somewhere in the L.A. area, I don't know where, about daylight. Offloaded the boys from the Southern California, and they took off again for Sacramento. And they landed, I don't know whether it was Mather or McCullen, but one or the other. And they bussed us to Camp Beale, and that's where I was discharged.
That's where you were discharged, at Beale.
Yep.
Wow, well, that must have been just getting home seems like an adventure of itself.
It was like getting out of jail.
Yeah, I bet. And how long was that tour, Lloyd, when you signed up, when you came home?
3 years.
3 years.
Yep.
And this 3 years, do you have somebody at home that you're courting or that you want to be with, or you were married before you left, or you still
no.
single guy?
Oh, I was still single. I
Single
was only
guy.
18 when I went into the Army.
And now you were saying that you and that other buddy didn't smoke. I assume smoking was pretty popular back then.
Oh, the K rations, the C rations all had cigarettes in them.
No way.
And the smokers finally sure found out in a hurry who didn't smoke. Because the minute you opened a K ration or a C ration, they were right there bumming your cigarettes.
So smoking quite popular back then.
Yeah,
for
in
sure.
those days they were.
And what made you not do it, Lloyd? You have any reason why you didn't?
I don't really know. I never had a desire to smoke. I just didn't. I have never used tobacco in my life in any form. And I'm 98 years old in very good health. I went in for my last physical on my birthday or around my birthday, and the doctor, when I went in to get the results of it, looked at me and says, "I am amazed. You are the healthiest old man I got for a patient." I thanked. But yes, I'm still enjoying good health.
Good. Well, that's great, Lloyd, because you don't see a lot of people who didn't partake of that stuff back then, I guess, you know.
No, they were very hard to find.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, not like it is now where it's, it's kind of taboo, but yeah, that's unbelievable. So you came home, Lloyd, you got married shortly after?
Oh, no.
No, it was a while.
I didn't get married until 51.
Till 51?
Yep.
Okay, so you were by yourself till 51.
Well, I had to get a lot of hunting and fishing in.
So you come home then. So that's interesting. You come home, Lloyd, and then what do you do now? You come home from the military, what now?
Well, I had to make a few bucks, so I worked here and worked there, but I couldn't find anything I really wanted to do. And I did that for a year. I had two uncles that worked for the Richfield Irrigation District as ditch tenders. And one day, one of them came to me and he said, "Hey, they're going to hire a new man up at the Richfield Irrigation District. Why don't you apply for the job?" And they told me go up and get a hold of the old manager by the name of Al Harry. Boy, that sounded all right to me. So I trotted up to Richfield and I found my Al Harry and I talked to him for a little while and we hit it off. He says, "You're hired."
Right there.
Yep, he says, "You bring your lunch tomorrow and start to work." Well, that was 1947. 2 years later, they made me the foreman over the seasonal labor.
Gotcha.
Because everything was done by hand in those days. I did that for about 2 years. The first day on the job, I was we were riding out on the back of a truck on a pile of gravel. We were going to pour towing a cement mixer, and there was another old fella sitting on the back with me on the gravel, and we were going down the main canal, and it was in October. We'd drained the system, so there was just a little bit of water in the bottom of the canal, but from the high water line to the low water line was just lined with holes. And I asked him, I said, "Who made all those holes?" He says, "Mushrats." I said, "You mean muskrat?" "Yeah, mushrats."
Mushrats.
And I got to thinking, that muskrats are a fur bearer. And if there's that many of them, I might be able to make a little bit of money on the side. So I bought a trapping license for $1 and a dozen traps. And on the way home, I set a few traps. Well, I didn't know my ass my hole in the ground
about
trapping. And so all I was catching the first few days was the old wharf rats. But finally, I learned how to catch muskrat. And I did that. I set traps on the way home during the trapping season, and I'd pick them up on the way, go to work early and pick them up. And one day, the manager of the district came to me, and old Al Harry, and he said, "You're doing a good job out there cleaning up muskrat. How would you like to do that all trapping season?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "We'll furnish you with the rig and the fuel, pay you for your 8-hour day, and you have to furnish your own license and your own gear, but you can keep whatever you catch."
Oh, wow.
Holy mackerel. Within a week, I was doubling my income.
Oh, that's a good deal.
Man, I was working from daylight till dark. Man. Anyway, I did that for up until 1964. Or 74. No, it was 64. And my neighbor, Ole Lindborg, came down to the house one day, and he was on the board of directors of the irrigation district. And he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you." And I walked out. He said, "Al Harry's going to retire?" And I said, "No, I hadn't heard that." "Yes, he's going to retire. How would you like to take his job?" And I said, "Well, I'm not prepared to be a manager of the district." "Well," he said, "come to the next board meeting. The board members want to talk to you." I went to that next board meeting. They interviewed me, and when I walked out the door, I was the manager.
You were the manager
of the irrigation district. 26 years later, I retired.
As the manager.
As the manager. But I still managed to trap a few muskrat.
Now, Lloyd, you said you were catching wharf rats at first. How did you figure out what the muskrat?
Trial and error.
Trial and error.
Yep.
You couldn't get on YouTube or Google, right?
No.
That's definitely different than today. How do I do it? Well, you just get online, but you had to do it the old-fashioned way. So then you go from muskrats. Now, when I was a kid, I always see beaver dams and stuff out Cherokee and stuff like that. And I was always wondering, how do you get a beaver to come out of his dam or his little hut?
Beaver are fairly simple to catch. They live in their den during the day, and then they go up forage during the night. Well, they'll dam off, say, a drain ditch, but there's a rice field next to the drain ditch. They den up above the dam, what we call a crossover. They crossed over from the drainage ditch to the rice field. and if it's active, they leave a wet trail.
Oh, really?
And they make what's called a conibear trap. It's kind of, it's about 14 inches square.
Okay.
And it sets up vertically with two forks coming down. That's the trigger. And you set it right in that wet crossover. And that beaver comes out at night. The minute his nose hits that trigger, I got a beaver.
Gotcha.
But a lot of times I just go out at night and sit early in the evening and shoot them.
When you get the beaver, how do you get rid of the dam or the obstacle?
Oh, you have to go out with a backhoe and
Backhoe and take it down. You
And
couldn't blow it out with dynamite.
The trouble is with a beaver, if you don't get the beaver first, you're just wasting your time taking that dam out because they can build that dam back in one night.
Wow. It's amazing how smart those creatures are.
Yep.
I mean, they really, to think that, they know how to dam this up. And I mean, I guess they're damming it up. What? So they have water around their little hut? Is that their whole purpose?
Yeah.
That's
They go in under the water and up into if they're burrowed into the bank for their den, they'll go up and build a cavity in the bank. And you don't find that until your
levee blows.
Well, levee blows or your front end of your pickup drops out of sight. Anyway, or if they're in a pond or a reservoir, they build these beaver houses or beaver huts. And the same thing, they go in under the water and up into it.
Wow. And so you get these beaver, these muskrats. What do you do with them?
Okay, they're fur bearers. So I skinned them all, stretched them, dried them. At first, I was selling all my muskrat to an old fella in Sacramento. He had Pacific fur and wool. But then one day, I was told they have a fur sale up in Oregon, in Klamath Falls every year. And it's a huge fur sale. And buyers from all over the United States and some from Europe and Asia come to that sale. And I could be making quite a bit more money on my pelts. So I collected them all season, and I go up there in March to that sale, and I was double my money.
Wow.
So I sold in Oregon for the last few years.
So, Lloyd, you get a beaver, you skin him out, you hang up his hide. How long does it take before that thing's ready to sell?
Depends on the weather.
Let's say it's a summertime kill. June.
Well, no, summertime they're not
active.
prime and they're not worth anything.
Okay, so what's the season on these things?
November 1 to March 31.
And so then you get one.
That is called the fur season.
Okay, and you get one. How long does it take you to get it ready to sell?
Oh, I can skin a muskrat in 3 minutes.
And then how about drying it and getting ready?
Well, they make a wire frame that you put them on called a stretching frame.
Okay.
And you just slip it on there like you would a sock wrong side out. And when the skin side is dry, you take it off and
that's it.
That's it.
Nothing special. So
Nothing special.
A few days or a month?
Oh, it depends on the weather.
Okay. So these you're drying them in early spring or in the fall.
Oh, you dry them immediately.
Right away.
Well, you can freeze them, but I didn't like to freeze them.
Wow. And then, of course, they make everything out of them, rugs and...
Oh, coats,
whatever.
The beavers, felt hats.
Yeah.
They shear it, make clothing material out of it.
Do they still have that show, Lloyd, up there that they do?
I don't know. I stopped trapping a few years ago. After I retired, I trapped a few years just to help the farmers out and to make a few bucks and to get out of the house. Anyway, about 4 years ago, I went out west of Gridley to a fellow called me and had a beaver problem. Well, I set a couple of traps on a crossover. The next day I had a beaver, but he had broke the spring or the chain and was out in the middle of the drain ditch. I'm out there by myself in the evening, and I slipped on a pair of knee boots, and I thought I could just step out there and drag him in.
Oh.
Well, I immediately sunk in mud over those boots.
Oh, no.
And I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the bank about 10 feet away across from me, and I can't turn around. And I said, what am I going to do now? My cell phone's up in the pickup. I finally worked. It scared the hell out of me.
Oh, yeah.
And it was getting late, and I'm out there alone. Finally, I worked my foot out of one boot, and I stepped out, and I got turned around, and I pulled my foot out of the other boot, and I walked up the blackberries to my pickup in my stocking feet, and there's a pair of boots out in that drain ditch right now.
Still there.
And I said to myself, what are you doing out here?
Oh, wow. Go.
So I kind of give it up.
I think that was a good idea, Lloyd. You did trapping. Now, is anybody doing your trapping job since you took off, or is that a thing now?
Nobody took it. You know, I was sitting having coffee in the Richville Cafe one morning, and one of the ranchers, we were talking. He says, how many muskrat do you think you caught through the years? And I said, well, it's only been the last 10 or 15 years that we had to send in to the Fish and Game a record of where and when and how many.
Gotcha.
And I said, I'll have to give that a thought. And I went home and I started adding up how many muskrat I was catching on an average a year. And I had caught about 45,000 muskrat.
Wow.
So I kind of cleaned out the muskrat, and chemicals, the herbicides in the canals have did away with their habitat.
I see.
You can find a muskrat once in a while, but they're rare around anymore. A lot of beaver.
A lot of beaver, and
Yep.
and out of the two, which is a better pelt?
Muskrat.
Muskrat.
Yeah.
And the reason is it just
Beaver were too hard to prepare for garment material
I see.
and too heavy. It didn't sell well.
Okay.
Most of it went to Europe.
Oh. And the muskrats, you said, make those holes in the ditch. Is that where they live? Is that why they have the holes there?
Yep. They go in under the water, up into the bank, and build their den. Well, sometimes they were bad engineers and they went clear through the bank.
Oh.
We had a terrible time with them before we got equipment. And, at the beginning, we didn't have a backhoe. When I took over as manager of the district, we had an old Chevrolet truck, a D4 dozer, and a half-yard dragline. That was our equipment.
That was it.
Yep.
So when you had to build weirs and all those other things, it was all by
Everything
hand.
was done by hand.
Wow. Wow, that is crazy, Lloyd. You said you had a son.
Yes.
And then you you still live in Richville. That's the same house where you bought when you were out of the military. And we talked about the jobs that you've did, but the biggest one obviously is the Richville irrigation. And when you did stop the trapping, there was just nobody else who wanted to do it, or what was the?
Well, the government trapper kind of took over.
Oh, okay.
The Department of Agriculture has these trained trappers. Each county can contract with the Department of Agriculture for a government trapper. If you have a problem, say a beaver is damaging your property, you call him, he'll get in touch with you, go out with you, and take it out of. So he took over where I left off.
Interesting.
His name is Matt Alberts, and he's a fine trapper.
Fine trapper.
And a good man.
And all of this trapping skill that you acquired, like you said, it's trial and error, right?
Trial and error.
Pretty much everything.
Yep.
Now, what hobbies do you enjoy, Lloyd?
Hunting and fishing.
Hunting and fishing.
Yep.
And when we were talking at dinner, you were telling me about the buffalo hunt you went on and how that's the best meat you've had. And you did that, you said, in eastern Colorado.
Yeah.
And
out of Lyman, Colorado.
Out of Lyman, Colorado, that you shot with your granddad's 30-30? Is that what you told me?
That's my granddad's old 30-30.
Wow. How many bullets did it take?
The first one would have did it, but it would have taken too long.
Gotcha.
So I think I put 4 in it.
Being where you're at in life and how much you've seen, What is it like now compared to what it was back then when you were 20? What can you tell people that are listening that may not have a clue of what it was like?
A deep divide between the liberal part of our government and the conservative part of our government. We aren't getting the right things done. There's just too much bitterness. Much bitterness.
You know, Lloyd, and I remember when I was a kid in the 80s watching the news that my grandparents would have on, and I don't remember it ever being like partisan. It was just the news.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just don't remember that. Is that the way you're kind of talking about?
Well, right now, who do you believe?
That's the thing. It's like, who do you watch? You know, you get two different newscasts.
There's no trust in our government anymore.
Yeah. And that wasn't like that back then.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no. People were patriotic then, and there's no patriotism. There's no pride in our country anymore.
And what do you think that is, Lloyd? What has caused that?
I don't know, really.
And I've racked my brain with it too. I don't.
Mistrust. There's too much.
That's what I'm thinking. It's just not like it was. It just seemed like it was pretty black and white when I grew up.
And this damn virus couldn't have come along in the worst time.
Yeah, no, that's true.
You know, I never did believe that we should ever have a one-party government. But at the point right now, I think we need a one-party government that's conservative and got the people. They're doing the best job they can for the people, not themselves.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, Lloyd. I think it's definitely something we're lacking, and we need to get it back because
we need to get trust in our government back.
Yeah.
And we don't have trust in our government anymore.
No, it's unfortunate because my kids don't know what it was like, you know, and to grow up when it was kind of normal.
I didn't get concerned with politics until about the time I retired from the district. I'm a redneck. I admit it.
Especially with our state here, you know, it's been talked about for years about splitting.
Well, the trouble with our biggest problem is the division between the urban area and the and the farming people.
Yep.
They don't understand anymore in these urban areas where their food's coming from.
That's right.
They don't know how it's getting there. It's what it takes to grow it. They say, hey, that damn blocking a couple of salmon from going up the river. Let's take it out. You know what they're doing? They're causing the problem.
Yeah. No, it's a totally different world in the city where you just go to the store or go to the, you know.
You know, right here in California, there is more legislators in the 5 counties south of the Hatchapees than there is in the whole North State.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem lies.
That's true. Yep. And like I said, they've talked about splitting the state before, which is greatly needed because we just have 2 different states.
It's 2 different. The San Francisco Bay Area and those 5 counties in the LA area.
Yeah.
Are our problem.
Yeah. Control everything.
They control us.
Yeah. And that is.
We can vote, but our vote only counts on local issues.
That's right. I don't know what it's going to take, Lloyd, to accomplish that because I really am disheartened when a lot of people that I know are moving away from the state and moving to places like Idaho and Texas and Tennessee.
Hey, I have one of my wife's nieces lives up in Oregon. When they retired, they moved to Oregon. Well, look what's happened now.
I know.
It's caught up with them.
Yeah. And it's sad to me when you look at where we live here in this Butte County. I mean, you got the ocean 3.5, 4 hours away. You got mountains an hour away. You got the Afterbay. You got Lake Orville. I mean, we have tremendous growing season, everything, the weather, yet the politics just drags you. And it's unfortunate because it shouldn't be that way. It wasn't that way when I was growing up.
Oh, not on the shelf, just go in the back room and get some more.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. You're 97,
98.
98, excuse me. What do you say to somebody who's young, and not me, but somebody who's young, about the secret to living to be 98?
I'm going to tell you something.
All right.
We opened up a hospital in Belgium, in an old prison, red brick buildings, old red brick buildings. The first night there, they put us in a cell block. The rooms were only about 8 feet wide and about 12 feet deep. High walls, all red brick. But it was so old that the mortar was falling out of the bricks. Well, in order to make room, we pushed our cots up against the wall. I woke up the first morning and I had bumps all over my forehead. And I said, something's been eating on me. And I got to look at bed bugs coming out of the bricks, cracks in them bricks and chewing on us. And I said, I'm not sleeping in here another night. I'll move my bunk out in the middle of that courtyard before I was... Well, I went down and I took a shower. In fact, we had a good shower there. And they just opened up the PX. And I trotted down there and I told the sergeant in charge, I said, what had happened? And I said, you got anything in here that'll kill bed bugs? And he said, well, no. Well, wait a minute. I got some cases of some 1 pound bags of a white powder called DDT. And I said, well, will it kill bed bugs? Well, let's look. And he said, by golly, it says bed bugs and lice. I said, he said, we're supposed to have got some flit guns, but they haven't come yet. He says, I don't know how you're going to get it on walls and so on. I says, you give me some and I'll figure out some way. Well, I went back to that room. I poured about a bag of that into a sock, and I started beating that wall as high as I could beat. I beat my sleeping bag till it turned white. And I slept. It did the job, boy. It got rid of the bed bugs and lice. And I slept in that sleeping bag with that DDT for months on end. I think I'm still got DDT in my system, and it kills all the bugs.
Wow, that is crazy, Lloyd. You know, I thought you were going to say something like all your other buddies got sick, or I don't know. That was just, I can't believe that's mind blowing. DDT to the rescue.
And the other, I'm very convinced I never used tobacco in any form.
Any form.
I had a highball with the boys once in a while, but I never drank very. And that paid off. Gotcha.
I can't thank you enough for coming here to my house and doing this show with me. It means the world to me, and I just want to express that to you, that I really thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You know, I find you fascinating, and I appreciate and commend you for your service to our country, what you did, what you had to go through, that crappy boat trying to get you home and all, you know. I mean, it really is a testament to your generation, of the greatest generation. And I just hope that, God forbid something else happens again in this world, that we have people like you that stand up and do what you did.
Well, I was honored 2 years ago to make the honor flight, the Central Valley honor flight to Washington, D.C. I didn't know it at the time, but it was about 50 of us. And the second day there, they took us down to the World War II Memorial. They led us into an amphitheater behind the memorial. They gave us a program as we walked in. They said, find your name and your number, and you find that chair, and you sit down right in front. Yeah, I didn't know it, but it was the 75th anniversary surrender of Nazi Germany. First thing they did, the master of ceremony, was we had called our names. We had to stand individually while they read off our military record, the branch of service we was in, how long we served, and so on. That was the greatest honor I've ever had in my life.
Wow. Like I said, I'm in awe of people like you that did what they did and knew that it couldn't go well, possibly, and you still did it, and you did it well. You were also telling me while you were talking about that at dinner how you went to New Zealand on a stag hunt and you ended up on the front page of the paper. What happened there?
Oh, it was, as I say, it was Anzac Day, and it's the same day as ours, or same type of celebration as our Memorial Day.
Memorial Day?
Once they found out that I was a veteran, they couldn't do enough for me. Even the chief of police invited me out to go fishing on his ranch. Anyway, that was a very, very enjoyable trip.
And you said that they do that on a before the light or
before daylight.
Before daylight.
Yep. All the pageantry is done before the laying of the wreaths is done before daylight.
Wow. Well, Lloyd, you have anything else you'd like to add that I haven't thought about asking you? I'm sure that other people listening to this show will probably say, oh, you should have asked Lloyd this or that. And I apologize if I didn't get your question, but you got anything, Lloyd, that you would like to say?
Not really, but I want to tell you one thing. I've lived in Richville for a good many years. I am the elder person in that village. I have never been so proud of a little village as I am of Richville and the accomplishments they have made. They're a good group of people.
Yeah.
The old originals are Swedish or Norwegian people, Scandinavians, most of them were. Came out here from Nebraska with very little in their pocket, and they've done well.
They've done well. Well, I remember, Lloyd, when I talked to Danny Stevens, which you know well, at the Silver Dollar Fair, and I was telling him about my podcast and about how I did this show on Memorial Day, and Danny's first thing he said was, you need to get a hold of Loyd Horn. And I said, who's Lloyd? And he goes, he's at the Richville Cafe every day at noon. And I said, okay, Danny. I said, I want to meet him, and I want to see if he'll maybe do a show with me. And he goes, yeah, that'd be great. Well, I tried to get with Danny to meet you with me, and the day I wanted to do it, he couldn't come. And he said, just go there. He goes, you walk in the door and you go to your left. He said, but don't sit in the regulars' seats. And I said, Danny, which one's the regulars' seats? You know, I don't want to get this mixed up. Well, he said, well, Terry Williams sits here, Mike Job sits here, and Lloyd sits here, and Alan Fisher can sit there, and you know, this, that. And I'm like, oh boy. So me and my son Tanner get there at 11:50, and I told the waitress, hey, I don't know Lloyd, he doesn't know me, but I want to meet him. She goes, oh, well, you just come right in here. So they had that, you know, that big table in there, and I said, so I sat like 3 or 4 seats down. They already had your iced tea and all the other guys' drinks set up, you know, before anybody was even there. And so she came in to get my order, and she says, well, what are you doing sitting over there? And I said, well, I don't know Lloyd. I don't want to just, she goes, no, you sit right here. And I'm like, but Lloyd's, I said, where does Lloyd sit? She goes, right here. And I said, that's right next to him. I don't know him. I don't want to, you know, seem weird. And she's like, no, you sit right here. And I'm like, okay. And then, you know, then Terry Williams came in and Mike Job came in. And I'm like, hey, where you lost? You know, because I haven't been there in forever. And then you came in and, you know, you are genuinely the nicest guy. You didn't know me from Adam, and you welcomed me right in. You let me sit right beside you, and we had a great lunch.
I'll tell you, we're called the protesters. There's never been a face mask at our table.
Yeah, that was a nice thing to go see for sure. But that was my experience with Richvale. I have, family that live there, and it's just a great place. You're absolutely right. No, Lord, I just can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And
it's been my pleasure.
I think the most of you, and hopefully that you will be around for another podcast that we can do.
Well, one lady in town, she's dead now. She died of cancer, but she looked at me one day and says, "You're going to live to 110."
I like that, Lloyd. Well, Lloyd, again, I thank you again, my friend, and that's all for this edition of Front Row Chaos. You can find this podcast on any of the major carriers, and the website is coming soon, so you'll be able to email the show and be able to give me some show ideas if you have things that I haven't covered that you'd like covered. But I want to thank you all again and thank Loyd Horn for coming here and doing my show. You all have a great and blessed day, and thank you again for listening to Front Row Chaos.